Okay, so here we're going to look at the method toString, and toString is a method that we provide in our classes so that other methods can call it. This is what's called a callback, and what's really important for us in working in Java is that system.out.println will call toString on every object that we pass. So looking at the examples on the bottom, on the right, Fido is a dog object. So system.out.println will try and call toString method on that dog object. And so it'll look in the dog class first for that method. Similarly, on the left, list1 is of type list. And so it'll go inside the list class to look for the method toString. And again, if it doesn't find it in that class, it goes to the parent class. Okay, so in CS60, we used this code, which was our back pocket code. And we had a toString method that said, this dog is this.myAge, years old, whatever. And when we ran our main method, which we saw in the previous slide, that system.out.println called essentially fido.toString. But remember, inside of the println method, it wouldn't know that we had called our variable Fido. Okay, so in the main method here, I'm making two different lists. One has strings in it, one has dogs in it. I add C and then B and then A, and then when I call system.out.println, toString will be called and I get this printed, this A space B space C, all in parentheses. With the dogs, if I add two dogs to my list, I can see the output here where it uses the dog toString method. This dog is 4 years old, this dog is 2 years old, like we saw in that previous slide. So your task is to try and write that toString method that's going to go in the list class. And you want it to have exactly this same behavior. So you should pause the video here and I'll keep going when you come back with the solution. Okay, so here we are at our toString method. Right now I just have it returning null so that it compiles. But I know I'm going to want to return a string. So I'll create a string called result. And then in the end, I can return result. And once we handle the bulk of what this toString method should do, we can come and fill in additional details like adding those parentheses. So the main thing that I care about in these types of methods in the list is walking through the elements of my list. So walking through each of the list nodes. So I need to get a reference for the first list node. And that's identical to what we did when we were calculating length by walking through the list nodes. And remember, I'm going to be able to walk through the elements of my list by saying node gets node.myNext. But remember, if node is null, imagine this.myHead is null. Node will start as null. If node is null, then I can't say null.myNext. That doesn't make sense. That's a null pointer exception. So I need to protect this with a while node does not equal null. And that'll have that local variable node walk through each of the list nodes in my list. When I finally get to the point where node is null, it won't execute the body of the while loop and it'll return result. Here I really have the core of my code written. I just need to add in to make sure that I'm actually updating result. So let's put an open paren and a space to start off my result. And let's add to the end an additional close parenthesis. Now inside the while loop, I want to update result. So I can say result gets result plus. And I want to add in the data from that node. So I have node.myData, but actually node.myData won't necessarily be a string. Since we need it to be a string, we have to take whatever that object is and call toString on it. And you might have noticed that I put a space after the open parenthesis. I actually think we want a space in between each of our elements. That's how we had it modeled on the last one. So I'll also add a plus a space after each element. And that means I don't need a space before the close paren because I'll already have one from the last element. Awesome. Hopefully at this point you can go back and see which of these pieces you missed in writing your code. Maybe one thing you did differently was used a for loop. And if you didn't use a for loop when you wrote yours, try and take the code here and convert it to be a for loop. That's just good practice as you're getting used to working with while and for loops. So if you didn't write it with a for loop, try that now, pause the video, and I'll keep going. Okay, so here I've got the solution for writing toString with a for loop. You can see that my initialization, creating that node, I do that here in my first part, which is my initialization. My predicate, node does not equal null, is the exact same across the two. And then my update is node gets node.next. Okay, whoops, I have a slightly different instance variable name here. Those should be my next.